Welcome to Ask a Property Manager episode 102. Today we're taking a look at 3 lease clauses that you need to have in your lease to make sure that you're well protected. Stick around to the end to hear a story about how I got screwed by a tenant early in my career and the lease clause that created. We'll get into all that right after this. Stay tuned. So we've been in the property management industry for over 10 years now, and we've seen a lot of changes in this industry since we've been around. Political changes, legislative changes, changes in how society sees things and operate it, you name it, the world at large is definitely changing. Today we're taking a look at 3 lease clauses that we've added to our lease over the years to help make it more bulletproof. These are lease clauses that are direct from our current lease, directly from the current version that we're using. I just went and pulled screen caps right before we started filming this video. So this is the lease clauses that we're currently using here in our market of Buffalo, New York. I'm going to preface this entire thing by saying I'm not an attorney. You need to talk to an attorney before you make any changes to your lease, whether you're adding, removing, or changing. Make sure that whatever you're doing it with your own best interest in mind, and make sure that you're following the rules in your state. All that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into clause number 1. This one is on maintenance of lawn and snow removal. I'm not going to sit and read through all of these line by line, but I will leave it up on screen here for a few minutes so that you could take a look at it. And obviously you can always pause to write it down if need be. So lawn and snow removal. I'm legitimately shocked at how few people have this clause in their lease. This is one of those things that creates issues quickly when the yard isn't getting cut and the snow isn't getting shoveled. And by not having a clause like this in your lease, you're basically leaving yourself open to questions as to who's supposed to be responsible for things. And realistically speaking, that's something that you never want to do. You want to make sure that things are specified in your lease wherever possible. Having this lease clause gives you the ability to specify who's responsible and to what level. So for instance, you may want to have the tenants cut the lawn, but you're going to have somebody come out and professionally trim the hedges or the trees or something like that. You can specify that in your lease. Maybe you want the tenants to take care of shoveling off the snow and throwing some rock salt, but you're going to take care of the plow service for the driveway. That should be specified in your lease. Leaving things out of your lease or leaving things ambiguous really just does lead to headaches down the road. So for that reason, I would recommend making sure that you have some sort of a clause in your lease that specifies who's responsible for the lawn, the landscaping, the snow removal if you're in a cold weather climate, all of those things. That's what that clause is there for. It's to help you make sense of who's responsible for taking care of those items. Moving on to our second clause, this one is on utilities. This is another one that so few people have in their lease, and it creates issues almost every time I see it missing. Our lease clause specifies who's responsible for basically every utility at the property. This section could be expanded if you have something like propane heat or fuel oil or solar panels, whatever the case may be. But really what you need to do here is specify who is going to be responsible for what utilities. And you can see on here, we even specify the telephone, the cable, and the internet, because in some buildings that's included, and in some buildings that's a tenant-paid service. So we want to make sure that it's crystal clear as to who's taking care of those utilities. One thing that I have heard from a lot of the Section 8 agencies is they want more than just a check mark saying that the tenant's responsible. They want the word, I'm going to switch back to that screen real quick. So in those blanks where next to it, like gas or electric, they actually want the word tenant or owner for the responsibility. So they want even more than just who's responsible. They want it specified in such a way that it cannot be misconstrued, which I guess makes sense. I don't disagree with them on that because there are so many questions that come up as to who's responsible for utilities when it's not specified in the lease. There are a couple of extra bits in that clause. I'll go ahead and jump back to it here so that you can take a look. There are a couple of extra bits in this clause that are important as well. The one section I wanted to make sure that we highlighted was the unpaid utilities can be withheld from the security deposit. That is critically important, especially if you have a single family where something like water stays with the property versus following the account holder like gas or electric do, at least here in Western New York. That might be different in different areas. But at least here in Western New York, the gas and electric accounts are held by the tenant, and the water account typically remains in the landlord's name because an unpaid water bill can become a lien against the property. So that's why we do that, and that's why we have this clause. So if a tenant leaves a water bill, you can at least deduct that water bill from their security deposit. The other thing that I wanted to mention with requirements, the other thing I wanted to mention with regards to this lease clause was the requirement for a utility installer to get a letter authorizing the install. And this is one of those things that doesn't happen all the time. As a matter of fact, it almost never happens. Many installers don't ask for the note, or it's buried somewhere in the contract when they come out to do the service on the property that the tenant has already talked to the landlord and received the appropriate permissions and blah, blah, blah. Look, I can guarantee you that the tenant's not getting the appropriate permission, because I can tell you that we hardly ever get requests for this, yet almost every single one of my tenants has cable and has internet and has satellite and everything else. So basically why that part of the clause exists is to cover you in the event that they cause damage. So for instance, basically we had a brand new roof that went up on a property. And within a week of that brand new roof going up on the property, there was a brand new satellite dish on that brand new roof. It was a tenant that never had satellite service before, but decided a week after we put a brand new roof on that they were going to go out and get satellite service. And of course the installer came out and threw the dish on the roof because that's where they typically go. The problem was he put holes in our brand new roof. So eventually what ended up happening was we went to the tenant and told them, hey, you need to call the installer back, tell them that this thing needs to be mounted on a pole in the yard because you're in violation of your lease. And then you need to argue with them to tell them, or to get that roof repaired, because there are literally holes in the brand new roof now. And the tenant was super apologetic, and they did have the pole, the satellite dish moved to a pole in the yard. But by that point, the damage was already done. We still had to have our roofer come back out and patch in the new shingles, and we still had to get that bill paid by the tenant. I don't know if the tenant ultimately did get their money back from the installer, or whether the tenant just ate that bill and said, my fault, should have followed my lease, whatever the case may be. It wasn't even a huge bill, it was more just the annoyance of the entire situation. But I can tell you right now, having that is good because it gives you leverage to go back for damages after the damage is done. A lot of things that are in our lease, you're never going to stop a tenant from doing a lot of the things that are in your lease, but it gives you the ability to go back after the fact and take corrective action. And that's really what that utility clause is all about. It really specifies who's responsible. It gives you the ability to back charge if there's damages caused as a result of not having utilities turned on, or if somebody installs utilities improperly, or whatever the case may be. Our third lease clause is on the condition of the premises. This one is great when you're the one placing the tenant, because you get the ability to complete a move-in photo set and a move-in condition report with that tenant, and then the tenant can add any additional issues that they notice for a period of up to 10 days after they move into the property. You can then add those additional damages into the report, have the tenant send you photos so that you can verify that it's not new damage the tenant created since they moved in, but it was actually existing damage. And then you just add it to your report, and then that way the tenant doesn't get dinged for it on their way out the door as part of their security deposit disposition. The nice thing is, after that 10 days, the tenant's accepted the condition of the property as being in good condition. So any new damages that you uncover at the time of move out beyond reasonable wear and tear, which is a totally different discussion, anything that you're finding that's damaged beyond that point, well, now you've got photos and a signed move-in form, and you have photos of the damages after the tenant moved out. That should make it very, very clear cut when it comes to withholding security deposit, or if you do have to pursue it in a small claims court action or something like that, hopefully you have a nice solid case for any damages at move out. And I did promise you one last lease clause. I'm going to go ahead and pop that up on the screen right now. Removal of landlord's property. This one happened many, many years ago, and I don't think I'm ever going to forget it. And essentially what happened was we did a really, really nice rehab on a property here in the city of Buffalo. It was a single family property, and we went a little bit above and beyond. We actually included a full suite of stainless steel appliances: stove, refrigerator, dishwasher, and above the range microwave, which is something we don't typically do. Honestly, we avoid dishwashers like the plague, and typically we go with a more baseline appliance set, simply because that's what's warranted in our market. Keep in mind, this was also at a time where stainless steel appliances were actually being billed at a higher cost than the standard white or black appliances were. Nowadays, it seems like those are pretty much non-existent. Everything seems to be more or less the same price, or within a few bucks thereof. But this was back in the day where stainless steel appliances were substantially more expensive than the plain white or the plain black, or even bisque, if people were still buying bisque appliances at that point. Essentially what happened was the tenants moved in. We had a move-in condition sheet, but we did not have any photos. And they lived there for a bit, stopped paying rent. We had to go through the eviction process. The eviction process was an absolute nightmare. And then at the end of it, we received the property back. When we got into the property, the unit had all sorts of damages, and the tenants had replaced my nice stainless steel appliances with one stinky, non-working white refrigerator filled with rotten food. They literally unhooked the dishwasher from like direct connect electric and the water line. They removed an over-the-range microwave and took it with them. Like, they took 4 appliances out of this house and left me with one stinky, non-working appliance, one stinky, non-working refrigerator. We ended up going back to court. We took it to small claims court for the additional damages and things of that nature, and the judge did not give us the appliance values. The judge did not award us the appliance values because we didn't have a set of move-in photos showing that the appliances were in place when the tenant moved in. Honestly, I think the judge kind of sucked. I'm pretty sure that if we had argued it a little bit more, we probably could have gotten the award for the stainless steel appliances. But you live, you learn. Now I have this lease clause, and now I am damn sure to have a move-in photo set every single time we move in, whenever I possibly can. That pretty much wraps things up. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something today, do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. If you have a friend that needs to learn this too, go ahead and share it with them. It would definitely help us out. Questions or comments, drop them below. We'll see you next week.